Hey guys, I'm here to talk about the final novel in Samuel Beckett's trilogy. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Unnamable, and then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the trilogy as a whole. Um, so, this last novel, again, not narratively connected with either of the other two, but it thematically is related. So, in this one, we have an unnamed narrator who is completely immobile, who can't move. He, as far as we know, he's sitting in a fetal position in some dark, pitch black cave or room. Um, and this novel is his internal monologue. Basically, it's one big monologue by him. So, after a short introductory section, we basically, for 90% of the novel, we have one long paragraph and words. um, the sentences seem to gradually get longer and longer and longer until like the last 4 or 5 pages is basically all one sentence. Um, and what I think he talks a bit about some characters who were probably made up, one named Mahood and one named Worm. And he also tells us that he is the author of the past two novels in the trilogy, as well as a couple of other of Samuel Beckett's novels. So it's kind of a little meta, I guess. But the sense, it's hard to make sense of this novel. It's probably one of the most confusing novels I've ever read. I found it really hard to keep track of what he was saying. Um, I know I didn't process it as well as I should have, but basically, he talked a lot about voice and how voice, voice creates us. The only way we all know each other and the way we know ourselves is through voice. I only know other people by listening to them talk to me. And I only know myself by what I say out loud and what I hear my brain saying. So he, throughout this novel, seems to be trying to break free of the influence of other people on his voice. Who these people who influenced him are is probably up for debate. It might be his parents, it might be society, it might be these fictional characters. But yeah, and it also seems like after that he wants to try to become completely silent somehow. Like he wants to stop talking and stop thinking. Um, and the only explanation for that I can think of is maybe he wants to be able to look at the world in as raw a way as possible to kind of see the world really as it is, see human life really as it is, without any of the mental or physical clutter that we usually look at it with. And toward the end of the novel, he maybe seems to be getting there, but as he gets there, he gets more and more despairing. He talks about needing to go on, having to go on, but feeling like he can't go on. Until the final line of the novel, which is, I can't go on. And then he follows it up with, I'll go on. So saying he can't go on, he's so sad, but he has to go on because he's here. Um, yeah, it feels, after reading this novel, like it'll be easier to talk about this trilogy as a whole than about any of the individual novels, which is why they're a trilogy. But you know, hmm, he talks about how he wrote the other two novels, and the sense that I get maybe is that he wrote those two novels as maybe a way to distract himself, a way to try to make sense of the world. But then he realized the futility of storytelling, how it incorrectly portrays life, maybe, and so finally resolves to look at the world itself. Um, so, yeah, this is a dense book, not to be skimmed, but you really have to be mentally aware while you read it. I don't think we're supposed to follow all of the trains of thought that go. It's very disjointed. He kind of jumps from one topic to another. Um, I don't know. This is probably the most baffling novel I've read so far. Um, but I think if I had to think about this trilogy as a whole, I think I would say that Malloy, the first novel, is about wandering. You know, how we're all here, we're all wandering, we all think we have a goal, we all think something's going to happen, we all act that way anyway. And we never quite achieve that goal, and even we are not sure what that goal is or what we'll do when we get to it or if it'll ever happen. So it's sort of the same idea as in Waiting for Godot. We're all kind of sitting here waiting for Godot, not knowing what to do. And that is a good summation of what humans do in their lives. And then Malone Dies is about how what we do along the way. So we find a lot of distraction along the way. We find little tidbits of happiness in certain things, even if it's transient. And every now and then we do stop to contemplate the meaning of our lives and the meaning of the world and existence. And then the Unnamable is about what happens when we stop wandering, stop distracting ourselves, or try to stop distracting ourselves, and just look at the world as it is. And definitely it seems like that's a hard thing to accomplish if you're looking at the Unnamable, because he spends a lot of the novels continuing to distract himself with random stories and thoughts about made up characters. So even when you're just sitting in a cave alone trying to think about the world, it's still hard to think about the world without it being cluttered with these attempts to distract yourself. So basically, this trilogy is just about the human condition. Um, I think I I feel like maybe I formed that bias in the middle of Malone Dies, and maybe I've just interpreted everything to fit my interpretation. Uh, so I'll need to reread this at some point and try to kind of read it without that bias and see whether I find more evidence to support it or not. It's difficult to once you've formed an opinion of a book or an interpretation of it, it's hard to get yourself out of it. But I feel like I need to try to reread this and do that. Um, but yeah, I definitely thought this was a very interesting reading experience. I would recommend you read this. It might not be for everyone, but if you're interested in modernism, this is probably essential reading. If you're interested in stream of consciousness, if you're interested in Samuel Beckett's oeuvre, you'll need to read this. These are his most important novels. If you're interested in experimental fiction, you'll really like this. But I definitely think this has a lot to say about the human condition, and you can look at the details of these novels and figure out other nuances of the human condition. I gave a very skeleton interpretation of the overall idea, but I feel like you could probably go through a lot of the details in these novels and find a lot of nuances to how humans experience the world. Um, so yeah, if you read this, do it with your full attention given to it. Um, you can't skim. Also, once again, I will say, having this along the way, A Reader's Guide to Samuel Beckett by Hugh Kenner, was invaluable. I think this book is the reason I made as much sense of it as I did. So if you can get your hands on this, then take it. If you're gonna read this trilogy, um, but also there's a lot on the internet that you can look up. There are some videos on YouTube about them, but definitely don't try to read these novels without a little bit of help. Um, so yeah, overall this was one of the hardest reading experiences to get through. Definitely. It took me a long time to read what felt like not very much. I mean, it's only 400 pages long, the whole thing. So it is a labor, but I think it's worth it. And I think that's all I got. Um, Hopefully, I can reread this sometime in the future and come back and give an update on my thoughts. But yeah, that is what I have for now. So, thank you